What's up, guys? Welcome to another speed build. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I hope you had a great weekend as well. And if you happen to get your hands on the brand new expansion pack, I hope you had a fantastic time exploring it this weekend. So, with that being said, that kind of leads me into the theme for today's video. So, I have been dying to make a summer camp ever since I seen the first reveal trailer, guys. I have been dying to make a camp. This camp is a little bit different than the one you find in game, though. So the one you find in game, first and foremost, is beautiful. I love the one you find in game. It is very, very playable and very functional. It makes it really easy to play, right? And I am pretty sure it was built by Griffy, if I'm not mistaken, and she is a fantastic builder. If you have not checked out her stuff before, definitely go check it out because she makes a lot of really cool and unique builds. And so this camp that she made is no different. I think it turned out so good. And like I said, so easy to play in. However, that doesn't mean that I did not want to demolish her camp and make my own, because I have been dying to do that. So as hard as it was to demolish that camp, I did it anyways, and I am completely building a new one. So the thumbnail has renovation. Renovation might be a little bit of a strong word, but it's the word that I chose. What can I say? So my camp is a little bit different though, so I do want to go over a few reasons why it is different than the one you find in game. So obviously, first and foremost, the most obvious is the fact that it looks completely different. So the one that you find in game is dark with greens and lots of dark browns and that sort of vibe. I wanted to do like a super happy and cheery, super cheerful type of camp. And so my main colors are this like medium wood and yellow, and then you'll find different colors here and there, especially on the inside. I kind of make it more colorful, right? I just really wanted it to be super happy and cheery. As soon as you walk through the front gate of Camp Gibbi Gibbi, I wanted you to feel the excitement, I wanted you to feel the happiness and the cheer that this place has to offer. So I really feel like I achieved that at the end. I did actually playtest this last night, should I say, just to make sure it was, functioning correctly, even though I had a great idea thinking it was. I had a really good suspicion that it was gonna work perfectly, but I really wanted to see it in action. Is that something that you guys like to do? Like, do you like to build, especially a build that you spent a lot of time on, and then you might not feel like playing anymore, but you still want to see your build in action just to see the full potential? Sometimes that happens to me, and that happened to me with this build, and I had so much fun. Even though I was tired last night, I had so much fun playing in this. And like I said, I didn't tell you the second reason why it's different than the one that you find in game already. So the one that you find in game already is for kids, right? It's kind of geared more for children, and that's great. I actually really love that about it. I really wanted to build this one for kids, right? Because I want to get my hands on those stinking modular playgrounds, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet, and I still didn't do it here in this build. But that is because I really wanted it to be different than the one you find in game, right? That one is so good that you're gonna need a reason to download a new one, right? Especially this early on where you're probably not even tired of the one in game yet. So I decided, I was tossing around some ideas, this and that, what I could do to make it unique, right? So what I ended up doing, I knew I wanted to make it a normal camp. So I decided, you know what though? Teenagers, they like to go to camp too. And so why don't I build a campground that is specifically for teenagers? And so that is basically what I did. That is the other reason why this one is different than the one you found in game already, is because it is geared for teens, and so you don't have any child skill building items. That doesn't mean that kids cannot come here, okay? You can totally make it to where kids and teens can come, or just children. Maybe upstairs where I have like the creativity room, it has like crafting stations and musical instruments and stuff like that. You could totally replace all of that with child only skill building items if you want. And then, it's like good as new. It's like nothing ever happened. It's for kids now, Even if you did not do that, kids could still come to this camp and have a great time and learn a bunch of different stuff, because a lot of the stuff that I included is usable for children and up. So at least there's that. You're not stuck with teens if you don't want to deal with teens, but it was actually really fun playing with teens instead of kids. Kind of a change, because I don't know if I did say this, but when the pack first came out, I made a house, I made a starter home, and then I made some Sims. And I really wanted to test and play the campground before I built one, because this is a lot of work. I wanted to make sure it was good. I wanted to make sure that it actually was going to be functional and playable and turn out really good. I don't want to waste all that time for nothing. So I really wanted to make sure I did a playthrough before I spent so much time just willy-nilly building a campground without knowing exactly what I was doing. Because I tend to do that sometimes, so I didn't want to do it this time. So really, those were the only two things that really made this campground different from the one that you find in game. I guess something else that makes it kind of different is that I included more activities, I think. At least I feel like I did. Of course, we have the archery area. Is it even a campground without the archery? No, it's not. Obviously, the other campground had that, but I'm just naming the different things my campground has now. So we did the archery. We have, actually, each of the cabins have their own bathrooms. That was not ideal. I really loved the way that Griffey had hers all in the main cabin area where like they eat at and everything. I really loved that idea, but I think I made mine a little bit too small, and I had too many big ideas that it just didn't fit. So I outweighed my options, and I really wanted to have an entertainment center area sort of thing inside for those rainy days that happen quite often, I've come to realize, in this neighborhood. And so I really wanted to do some sort of indoors playroom, and so I decided to do that instead of the bathroom in the main area. So I mean, it is what it is, but that just means everybody has their own bathroom in their little cabin. And these cabins are a little bit different because I actually have 2 Sims per cabin, at least on the camper side. And then on the counselor side, I did it kind of similar to how Griffey did, where the camp director gets their own room, and then the camp counselors, they share a cabin. So I did it sort of the same there, and I really liked how she had the campers on one side and then the camp director and the camp counselors on the other side. That actually worked out perfectly. I tried to do something different in the beginning. This lot is 50 by 50. It's a huge lot, but at the same time, it's not enough space somehow. And so really, honestly, how she had it laid out was the best layout for it. I just did it a little bit differently than how she did it. It's still kind of the same layout, but my cabins for the campers, they actually all face each other, but then they also have doors leading out the back way too, but you'll see that later. They face each other, and then they have like a common sitting area in between the front of the cabins, and then on the other side of the campground is the camp director and the camp counselor's cabins right next to each other, and they don't really have a common area. They don't need one, but the campers, I love the idea of them having a common area. And then I was actually gonna put the fireplace or the fire pit in the common area, but then I was like, you know what, it's kind of cool to have it by the water, which I believe is a lake. But if your Sims have to go pee and you have them pee in the water, just know that it says pee in ocean and not pee in lake. And that irritates me a little bit. But I get it. I'm pretty sure that's like from island living. It's part of that expansion pack, so obviously that's why it says Pee and Ocean. But I really wish, since swimming in lakes is a base game feature now, I feel like they should have updated that specific interaction and made it base game as well, and made it make sense for whatever body of water the sim is in. But I guess that is just too much to ask. Which sounds so bad, but it's kind of true. I mean, if that's the worst thing I found with this expansion pack, I feel like that's pretty good. I feel like that is a pretty good thing if that's really the only bad thing I found. Which, let me think. I really don't know of many bad things I found with this expansion pack. Oh, obviously a huge letdown is the fact that if you make a custom venue like plan, or a getaway plan, a custom getaway plan, and it completely disappears if you exit the game and come back, that is a problem. That would probably be the main issue, and probably the only issue I found, which that is a relatively large issue. I haven't tested it out yet as far as like if you save the preset. So maybe if you save the preset, that would save it. I'll have to test that out, because I might have just been doing it wrong, to be totally honest. I mean, that's really honestly a possibility, so let me not say too much before I know for sure. One thing I do want to mention while I am thinking about it is this is obviously a very long video. I mean, I probably should have said that in the beginning. We're now like 12 minutes in, but I do want to mention that this is a long video. I did keep a large portion of it. I really like to show you guys the whole building process and not like just clips of the whole thing. I don't know, I just like it for some reason. But also with that being said, there was a lot of unnecessary stuff though. Like stuff that you guys would have just been bored watching. So I did cut out some things, but for the most part, you're going to see everything I did while building this. And I did a lot of tests and a lot of, let's try this, oh no, that doesn't look good, let's change it. And so you'll see me do a lot of back and forths, but that is how the build process goes. You don't just like start building and it's perfect right from the start. You really, honestly, the build process is a lot of trial and error. So I do like to show that through my speed build as much as possible anyways, without it being totally annoying, I guess is the word I'm looking for, because sometimes it is kind of annoying watching it go back and forth and then like having no progress at all. So if you see any sort of like fade in and out like you just seen here, just know there was a large portion I had to cut out that was not worth you seeing. So sometimes more stuff will be added between the transitions, but for the most part I am showing you everything that there is to see, at least all of the interesting stuff. But here is basically how the layout is going to be. We're finally starting to get it together, and so you see the campers on one side, they have the cabins facing each other like I was saying, and then on the other side, that is where the counselors and directors stay. And here is the common area I was talking about too, and as of right now I have the fire pit, but that does end up changing. That platform I have in the lake that is right in front of those cabins, that ends up disappearing. I delete that. I was going to do something kind of cool there, didn't really know what. I almost was going to do one of those fitness things that you see in the main town, but I really didn't like that at all. So I ended up just removing that platform, and I do end up putting the fire pit over there, and I also end up putting some lounge chairs for like a little lounging area. Honestly, I wanted to put a radio. I wanted to put a radio in most spots on this camp, but I did as little electronics as possible. This is a campground. You don't want to bring electronics. I feel like a radio is fine. That's really not the same as like, you know, a TV or a computer. But I still feel like it's important for your Sims to be one with nature here at the campground. They need to really experience the whole thing, and the peace and quiet is part of the experience. And so outdoors, I decided not to put a radio. And honestly, outdoors with a radio, and if you have season, it rains, and then you have to constantly fix it or replace it, which honestly kind of helps your handiness skill, but that's a whole nother thing. I just felt like it wasn't necessary. Obviously, if you download this, if you feel like it's too quiet outside, which honestly I get, totally add a radio and, you know, fix it if it rains. Or if you don't have seasons, then perfect. You don't even have to worry about that. But with that all being said, I did include a radio up in the activity room, I guess we could call it, or the entertainment room, where all the arts and crafts and the music is, like all the musical instruments. I put a radio in there. I figured it made sense for that room since that's like a fun indoor space and there's already musical instruments in there. I felt like it just kind of made sense. And I did do the old-timey radio, so at least it wasn't super modern. It looks like one of those that like it needs like some sort of like satellite reception to work. I don't even know. It's the one that's like super old school looking. I put that up in the activity room. So at least there's that. And also in the camp director's room, I really wanted to make it kind of unique to the camp director. And so I figured the camp director, they're going to have some sort of online thing to do for the job. You know, they're going to have to talk to their higher ups or plan some stuff or order some stuff on the computer. I wanted to add a computer somewhere on this lot for any sort of ordering need you might need. Or if your sim is like dying of boredom, then they could probably sneak in the camp director's room and use that computer. I do have to say though, I'm very proud of the Sims when they go to summer camp, because I did not have to lock that camp director's door at all, and nobody even touched the computer, which is crazy to me. Usually Sims, they just flock to whatever computer they can find, and they pretty much fight over it and stand over it the whole time. But I did not experience that while playtesting this. So I was actually really impressed about that. I mean, honestly, like it's so bad. Like I sometimes when I build bars or other community lots, I will add a computer because you always need a computer, okay? When you play The Sims, it's necessary, at least in my opinion. And if I do add one to like a bar, for instance, literally all the Sims flock to that computer and they ignore the bar, they ignore all the games they can play, they ignore each other, and they literally stand over that computer like vultures waiting for it to be open, and it's kind of annoying. So I guess I need to stop doing that, but moral of the story is didn't experience that here, so that was really honestly a nice surprise. Because I really did kind of stress about that when I was building it and putting it in the director's room. I was thinking about all of the possibilities I could do to make sure that didn't happen. You could lock the director's door, you could also put a lock on the computer itself, but to my very, very nice surprise, I did not have to do any of that, and they didn't even show interest to it. And that's probably because this system is designed to work off of the plan that is set, and if there's not like an activity where you play on the computer set, then it should work fine. I think I even had free time as one of the time slots, and they still didn't go to it. So, I mean, honestly, that's awesome. That really is a plus. That's I just can't stress enough how big of an issue that really is for me most of the time. So while I was going on the rant about the computer and electronics and all of that, I did make some nice progress. I have plenty of landscaping down. I really love adding landscaping as early on in the build as I can get it, just because it makes it look so much more complete. And I don't know why, it just makes me feel like I make a lot of progress. So I went ahead and got down the landscaping I knew I was going to want, especially the bushes. And I actually came across those new like flower bushes, which are so cute. But I really honestly, when I first seen it, I was like, when would I ever use this? I feel like this would be so hard to include in a build. Well, guess what, guys? I found a way. This is probably the one and only time I will use those unless I do another sort of garden type of build, which, you know, might be possible. I guess like a butterfly atrium or whatever those are called would be really good to use these flowers for, because you can load the butterflies you find in the world, like, and you catch them and they're in your inventory, and you can actually rehome them onto those plants, which I love that. And I actually figured that there's 2 plants on this lot, or 2 of those big flower sculptures I included. One right here in the very front, which I absolutely love this idea. Remember earlier in the voiceover in the speed build, I mentioned that I wanted this to be very cheerful and happy as soon as you walked through the front gate. And I was trying to think of an idea I could put in the very front to give that aspect. And then I came across the yellow flower bush sculpture sort of thing, whatever those are called. And it's perfect. I felt like it was the perfect thing I was looking for. And so I put it right there smack dab in the middle of the little like grass circle I cut out. And then I surrounded it with rocks, which at first I was putting the rocks and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of planning on removing these. I don't know how I feel about them. But as the build goes on, I really love the way it looks with those rocks. Now, to be fair, I do not include any rocks anywhere else in the build, so it's kind of random. I just didn't feel like adding the rocks, to be honest. For some reason, adding rocks around all of the landscaping it felt like too much work. I don't know why, but I love the way it is surrounding that front flower bush. And I figured that that is the main bush that you could have your Sims rehome the butterflies on. And I also have a second one over in the garden area, which that is another thing this campground has that the other one doesn't, is a little gardening section. I felt like that would be perfect to include for a teens only campground, because I was looking for any and every skill building item out there that would make sense in a campground, and gardening is like 100% perfect for it. And so I really love the idea and the fact that I included a little garden, and I figured why not add a second butterfly bush there. That way your butterflies, I don't think they can pollinate your bushes in the game, but in real life they would. So I felt like they would go hand in hand. And there was a third flower bush that I really wanted to use, but I had literally nowhere to put it. I guess I could have found a space in between the counselor's cabin and the archery station, but I never really could get a good place for it that made sense. So I left the third one out, and I figured having 2 is good enough. One other thing I want to mention about the yellow one in the front. So you are able to place those little like squares that have insects or fish or whatever attached to it, some sort of nature or something. Sometimes it's ducks or gators. You know, they added that with the base game when they added ponds. Well, they added some with this pack of all of the new butterflies, and I added the Dina yellow, or the yellow Dina butterfly. I figured it was perfect. I mean, this whole build is based off of yellow, and I just feel like yellow is such a cheerful color. And so having the yellow butterflies right by that yellow flower, I just felt like that made so much sense, and I actually really love it. And it looks so pretty when you're actually playing the game and the yellow butterflies are flying around in certain locations. It just adds to the whole build. And so I was so happy to see that they did add those little squares with the new butterflies. Now, you cannot catch those. It's not the same as the ones you find throughout the world. where you can actually like catch them with your butterfly net and stuff. No, they're really just for show. They're just for decoration. They're not there, I guess. So you cannot actually catch them, but that's fine. I figured whatever, I would still prefer to have them there than to not have them. And so yeah, I just really love that idea. But a whole nother subject, while we are in this room, I really want to explain what this is. So this little like butterfly exhibit thing is brand new in this pack, and you can actually put all of the butterflies in your inventory and the moths as well into that exhibit. And so I really love that. So I wanted to include a room. It's almost like an exhibit room, or so there's this place here in Florida, specifically in the Tampa area where I grew up, and it is called Nature's Classroom. I don't know, is that a thing across the US? If you're in another area, did you have something called Nature's Classroom where that was like my husband, okay? You guys might not know this. I'm going to put my business out there. My husband and I, we are 24 years apart. Yes, okay, let's get that out of the way. Wow, shocker. But anyways, this is like a generational thing, I guess. So not only did my generation go to Nature's Classroom, but his did as well. So this was a common thing for generations, literally, here in the Tampa area. And it's called Nature's Classroom, and you go over to the Hillsborough River. They have like this sort of campground setup, and you learn all there is to know about nature and our specific like insects and fish and different nature things in our area, and it's like this super fun thing. You also participate in a lot of different nature activities, kind of like this play or this campground. We went canoeing instead of kayaking. We would go canoeing, we would go like fishing, we would go like knee wading in the river and catch these little things. I don't remember what they were called, but we would do different nature activities as well. So you learn and you interact with nature there. It was actually super cool. And we would always do it in 6th grade. That was like, not only did my generation do it in 6th grade, but so did my husband. So, and I can't remember if my parents said that they went to it as well, but honestly, they probably did. This has been an ongoing thing here in Tampa, and I think they're still doing it. Like my nieces and nephews, I'm pretty sure they do Nature's Classroom as well. So let me know. I don't think I finished the statement, but if you're from a different area, do you have Nature's Classroom or something similar to it? Because I'm very curious about that. But anyways, well, part of that Nature's Classroom is like this room that is full of snakes and frogs and different reptiles and insects and stuff like that. And I really loved the idea of including that somewhere in this build. And so that is what that room is. It's basically an exhibit room where everybody will go and learn different facts about the reptile or insect they are looking at. Now, one thing I really wish we could have added are snakes. That's one thing we don't have in The Sims 4 yet. I feel like this would have been the perfect pack to introduce snakes with, but whatever, missed opportunity. There's no shocker there. And so that really, moral of the story, is what I was aiming to do in that room. Is really just like an exhibit room where you can go and learn different facts. Now, to be fair, it is not going to be that playable other than your Sims going and adding their butterflies, or maybe using those caterpillar homes where you can grow your own butterfly. And I did add a frog in there as well. And so it's really just for your Sims to go and view things. They're not really going to be taught a lot of facts by the camp counselors or the director, even though that was what was going to be in my imagination. But I knew that wasn't going to be a possibility. But at least they can go there and like, it's still interactive in some fashion. One other thing to note is the fact that those caterpillar homes, okay, the way I place them, they don't actually work. So once you download this, or I might do it before I actually upload it onto the gallery, but if I do forget, just keep in mind, in order to actually use those, you will have to actually pick them up and snap them to the desk that they are on, and then they'll work. I just freely place them, and that's why they don't work at the time. Sorry about the cat incident in the background. My cats love to play with each other. I know it doesn't sound like they're playing, but I promise they are playing. If you have animals, then you understand, I'm sure. But anyways, yes, I do really love that room that I created down there. And I also got the kitchen and the dining area done as well. So the kitchen is pretty self-explanatory. There's not really much interesting going on there. It's used for the counselors and the director to cook. Even though I prefer my gameplay for the counselors to cook, I feel like that makes more sense. And then the director can just be like with the kids, making jokes, goofing around, having a great time. I feel like that kind of makes sense. And then like the counselors, they cook, they clean, they do all the necessary yet boring tasks, right? So I did get those two areas done. One thing to note about the dining area though is that I included that like hot chocolate / tea kettle bar area. And maybe even coffee, even though I don't think you can actually use that for coffee. But I figured that was so cute to add there. Not only was I looking for something unique to add in that room, something different, something to make it more than what it was, but I really love the idea of having some sort of like coffee bar-esque thing. And I don't know, I was gonna say I don't think kids can use it, but this isn't for kids, this is for teens, so I'm pretty sure your teen should be able to go over there and make their own hot chocolate or whatever it is that they want. And then, of course, I added 2 dining tables. Oh, I'm not actually done with the dining room yet. I just placed the furniture I knew I was going to want to use. So there is a lot more that I'm adding in that room, don't worry. I ended up adding a fireplace in there too because I had a chimney, and I forgot that I had a chimney until I realized a little bit later in the build. And then I'll replace that big, large, like, shelf thing that I just placed there. I'll replace that with the fireplace, and I don't know, I kind of like it. It makes it feel really, really cozy on the inside with the fireplace. But yeah, I do have 2 tables. They both sit 6 Sims, so if you have 8 Sims for the campers, and then 2 for the counselors and 1 for the director, you have plenty of seating area in this little dining room. One other thing is that I did add stools over in the kitchen on the islands. Honestly, I would recommend removing those. I did have a little bit of a problem with the campers wanting to eat in the kitchen, and I feel like the kitchen is off limits for the campers. Like, no campers should be in the kitchen. That is strictly for the counselors and the director to be in there. So definitely, if I don't remember to do it before I load it on the gallery, delete those stools. It will save you a headache because all the Sims wanted to sit in those stools and it was kind of hectic in there. But then once I moved the plates of food into the dining room, they all transferred to the dining room. So I guess like there's a possibility that you'll be able to play around it, but honestly, it was not worth the headache. It was so much better just deleting those stools. It made it more of a flawless gameplay experience, which is a huge goal as a builder. To be totally honest, you want it to be as flawless of a gameplay experience as possible. Now, with that being said, there's always that one issue that you have and you totally miss it, but for the most part, I try really, really hard to make my builds very playable, but also really detailed at the same time. And that's kind of hard to do, to be honest, to make it as detailed yet playable as possible. And you'll see that once I finish the landscaping in the outside area. I really fill it up with landscaping, but it really is still fun and great to play in, even though there's a lot of landscaping. you'll notice while you're playing, your Sims will walk the path between the trees, but the trees will disappear as your Sim approaches it, if it makes sense. So you won't have a lot of tree bushiness in the way of what you're trying to do. So I really, really love that about the trees in The Sims 4 is that they do disappear when you get close to them. Unless you're trying to take screenshots, then you know what to do. You just back up and then press tab and then scroll your way over there, and then you'll still see the trees for your screenshots. But when you want them gone, they're able to be gone. So yeah, it's kind of great. I really love that. One thing about the trees is that, like, when you're in build mode, they don't disappear, so that makes it kind of hard to build around it, but at least during the gameplay, they disappear when you get close to it. So I'm sure you guys figured this out by now while I was rambling about everything else. I am working on that music and art room. So there is a category in the list of tasks you can do at your getaway, and one of it is like art and music or something like that. So that is what this room is inspired by. I really wanted to make a room that was indoors, that was plenty of skill building items, and your Sims could go there if it's like raining or super snowy outside and you don't want to go outside. That is if you have seasons at least, then it will rain and snow and whatever else. So I really wanted to do some sort of indoors area that had plenty of skill building items for those days you didn't want to be outside. And so I seen in the task, like the list of tasks, that it had art and music. I'm like, that is perfect. I can have a room that has music instruments and art at the same time, because one of the new things that came with this expansion pack was the crafting desktop thing. You'll see it in the 4 desks that are facing each other. I have one of those crafting kits on each desk. And then some of the desks I also included like a crafting manual, so like the ones that don't have the opportunity to make a craft, they could at least build that skill up with the book, if that makes sense. And then I also included a game table in there. I figured, you know, not everything has to be skill building items. You could also have a game table. And so then you can play whatever game you have. If it's base game, then I'm pretty sure it's just symbols, or no, that's the one that came with growing together, I think. Well, there's one that comes with base game, and it's the one that's like Don't Wake the Llama, I think is what it is. So you could play that there. If you have growing together, you could play symbols. If you have Back to Batu, or Journey to Batu is what it's called, the Star Wars pack, then you could play the Star Wars game. You could play cards, I think. You could play whatever. I think growing together also has like a puzzle thing that you could do. I think you could do it at the game table. I'm not 100% sure about that. But if you can, then you could build a puzzle there. So there's lots of different things you could do up in the room upstairs. And that is also the room that I end up adding the radio in. And then I added plenty of wall decorations just to fill it up. Just like I'm doing down here in the dining room and the kitchen, all of the rooms I place as much wall decor as possible because I want it to look like generations of Sims came to this camp and they added their little piece of history to the camp itself. That's kind of the idea I was going for, and I really love that idea, to be honest. I think it's such a cute idea. I also add plenty of sitting area. I keep saying seating area. Sitting area is what I mean, by the way. I add plenty of sitting areas in this build altogether. Like here in this dining room, obviously there's the dining chairs at each of the dining table, but I also add a lot of those stools just around too. So there's plenty of areas for your Sims to sit if they're feeling a little tired. And I figured like those stools would be perfect for like the counselors and stuff. It just makes sense to me. And here's when I realized I had a chimney and I needed to place a fireplace somewhere. And I'm really happy that I ended up placing this one here because it just feels so cozy when it's on. I love it so much. And it really added more in this room and I needed more, so it was like a win-win situation for sure. And I was still able to keep this big shelf that has a lot of like outdoor equipment like hats and whatever you need outside, you'll find it on that little shelf, or the big shelf, should I say. And I really love that shelf, so I definitely wanted to include it somewhere, and so I was happy that it still fit in this area. I also really love those wall hanging paddles that obviously probably were like old kayak paddles that either the director or the counselors or some campers back in the day, they painted and now they're hung up on the wall as decorations. I love that little touch. I think it's so cute. And something else I love that I actually did was under the staircase. So the stairs that I used were the wood stairs, and they had an empty space under it. And if you guys know me, I don't like leaving empty spaces anywhere if I can help it. And so I ended up adding like just random things under the staircase. Like I added a big like chest, and on top of the chest I added some plants and a light, and then I also added like some sort of base game item where it was like a barrel of like oranges that were spilt and like different like tubs and boxes of stuff. And I just really wanted to include a lot of different random stuff under that staircase so it looked like it was used for like storage in a way. I don't know, I just really liked that. So at this point in the build, we are pretty much done with the main area. And I don't think I mentioned that I did at least include a couple of half bathrooms in the main area. So we have one downstairs that is right by the kitchen, and then we also have one upstairs that is in the music and art room. So I really wanted to at least include some half baths there. It also is the way the floor plan worked out. I had some extra rooms, and I didn't want it to be just like used for like storage where nobody would ever go in there, which is a great idea, but I felt like it would be even better if I could make it playable somehow, and bathrooms was the best thing. So everybody has their own bathroom in their cabins, but there's also a few half bathrooms specifically to use the toilet in the main part of the cabin, or in the main part of the camp itself. So there should be no accidents at this camp. If there is an accident, then your sim is just not the brightest, and that is what it is. Sometimes that is what happens. Your sims just are not all the way there, and that's fine. Every sim is different, every sim is unique, and there's no judgment allowed here, except if they go pee in their pants. Then there's judgment, okay? I can't help but judge that, so. But anyways, we are getting together this little common area I made for the campers themselves. So like I was saying earlier, right outside the front door of their cabin, which I consider this the front door of the cabin, and on the other side is the back door. And two cabins, whoever are in the cabins on the south of the property, I guess, if that's considered the south, the back of the property, where the lake is, not the ocean. I made my point clear on that earlier, so I'm not going to make that mistake. So the lake, whoever has these cabins right here, they are lucky. They have a lake view. They have the best cabin in the whole campground, and I would be jealous if I didn't have those cabins. And then the campers on the other side, well, you know, they get nature. They get sidewalks and pathways and the rest of the neighborhood as their view, which isn't a terrible view either. This is a very beautiful world, but I feel like having the lake view is the best view here at Camp Gibbi. But like I was saying, the common area in between the front doors of all the cabins, I included some like picnic tables. I figured that if they wanted to eat outside, they have these picnic tables here in the back on the porch or the patio, but they also have some right outside their own cabin doors, or they can just sit and hang out and talk with each other there and tell stories or make jokes or whatever it is that they want to do, they can sit there and do. I also included a swing set. Now, I did say this is for teens and not children, but I feel like what sim, who doesn't like to swing no matter the age? I feel like as a grown adult, I still like to swing if I ever have the chance to. I'm not going to go to a park as an adult by myself just to swing, but if I find myself at a park and there's a swing there, I'm going to swing, you know? And I figured the same goes for teenagers here at Camp Gibbi. Why not add one of the brand new swing sets we have? And it looks cute there, and it was another activity, you know the story. It was something to put there, and I really like the idea of having it there, so I included it. And that's pretty much it for that area. And then of course there is the little garden there that I included right next to the common area as well. So I am now just finishing up this little area right here. I am putting up some lounge chairs, and I did a whole bunch of different colors because I wanted to be bright, happy, and cheerful in this area. And I felt like I wanted to put some rugs there, but that wasn't very realistic. So I did away with that idea. And of course we have the fireplace, and we have the dock that is leading out to the middle of the lake, and I added some kayaks there. I do add more kayaks later. I don't think I even recorded that, to be honest. I think it was when I was playtesting I realized 4 just wasn't enough when you're doing water activities, so I added 2 more. And you know, that's still not enough for each camper, so you better get there. It's first come, first serve, and let me tell you, if you're not there in the first minute, those kayaks are gone and you don't get to use it. And so I at least did include 6 of them, and I chose each a different color. It kind of matches the lounge chairs on shore, so I really like that detail. And I also add one other detail to the dock itself way at the end of the build, so let me go ahead and mention it now just in case I forget to mention it later. I have this big square at the end of the dock, and I did include some fencing around it. I like the detail, and it makes sense for like safety features. And I add 4 benches for like a sitting area, and smack dab in the middle, you know, I was looking at it and I'm like, it looks blank. It looks like it needs something. It looks like it's missing something. And what could I add there? So I ended up just like placing one platform straight in the middle of it, and then I made like a makeshift gazebo sort of thing, and then I put a picnic table in the middle of it. I'm describing this like it's some like extraordinary thing I came up with, and it's really not. But it really did add a nice detail, and I was really happy with the outcome of it, and so I did want to mention it just in case I forget to. And then of course I added a ladder so your Sims can jump off of the dock into the lake. And there are some new jumping things your Sims can do. They could do a dive now, and they can cannonball. Could they always cannonball though? I really don't remember, but I'm pretty sure diving itself is a new skill. So I really love that. I love that, and I really want to build a community pool too now that we have diving boards, but that's a whole nother thing. I am now working on the archery area, and as you can see in the front of the archery area when you walk in, I wanted to do some sort of entryway to make it unique and make it obvious that that is the archery area, right? And so I found this like entry looking banner thing, and I decided to put that in the front. And then I found this like piece of wall decor that was a bow with like 3 arrows on it, and I thought it was kind of perfect to put on top of the banner that's there, and it actually looks really nice together. It looks like it was made that way. And so I really like that touch. And you're also probably wondering, what is this thing right here? Why is there a random like little gazebo thing with a fan and a bench, and what is this? And so honestly, I didn't know what to put here, guys. I went through idea after idea. My husband was like, put another bathroom. I'm like, there's so many bathrooms. We don't need another bathroom. I really want to include something useful here. And, you know, we could argue the fact that that isn't necessarily useful in a way, but in a way it is. So I figured this could be like where they learn different tips and tricks on archery. Now, you can't actually use it for that. There is no archery manual, which is kind of a shame. I wish there was. I would have put those on the bench, but there's not. So I ended up just putting a pile of books there, and then I put a couple of those like books from base game that are open with a pen. It looks like it's being written in, and so I wanted it to look like some sort of little like classroom area basically. And then I added some other like pieces of clutter, and then I added the fan because it would probably be so hot and muggy right there. And I don't know, I thought it turned out pretty cute though at the end of the day, and kind of creative, I guess. And it was better than leaving it blank, and it was better than adding a bathroom and doing nothing else. So I am now adding some more touches to the landscaping, and I am using these like clusters of grass and placing these all around the lot. And I don't use these clusters of grass very often at all, but I thought it was such a great idea to add it here since this is a campground and everything's kind of growing wild. I mean, it's manicured in a way, but for the most part, it's pretty like wildly grown, right? And so having these clusters of grass throughout the whole lot, I felt like made a lot of sense. It added a really nice, almost realistic detail that I really enjoyed. And of course, I'm also adding those really big, circular, bushy, yellow flowers. This is a very cheerful camp, and pretty much the color scheme is yellow. I figured you guys probably figured that by now. And so adding those, which are my favorite. I use these all the time, but I was so happy I was able to use them here in this build, and they work really, really well. And sometimes I'm also placing like a garden pot, and then I'm placing like the smaller, more round, yellow flower bushes inside of those garden pots. I really like the look of that. They almost look like mums. I'm wondering if that's what they're meant to be. And they're super cute, and adding them inside of a garden pot, I love that little detail. It really makes a difference. It looks really good. I added them all by the campers' cabins, and then I added some off of the back patio, and then I also added some over in the director and counselor area as well, and then some in the front right before you get to the front gate. It's like right outside on the bottom where the front gate is. And once I finish placing all of the landscaping, I do add terrain paint too. And the terrain paint, I went back and forth on how much grass I wanted versus how much pathway I wanted. And I kind of did a good mixture of the two. I really wanted to make sure there was still enough grass that was visible and it wasn't just landscaping straight onto the pathway and no in between. I really wanted there to be some section of grass in between some of the pathway. So you'll see that throughout once I start doing the terrain paint here in just a minute. And I really worked hard on the terrain paint, to be honest. I really wanted it to look really nicely blended in and not just, a straight path on the grass like you see now with no fade in between it. I really hate the way that looks, and it really just doesn't make the build look as good as it could. Terrain paint, honestly, believe it or not, makes a huge difference in a build. If you don't use terrain paint at all, it definitely looks like it's missing something. And then if you just don't do terrain paint very good at all, it just kind of makes the whole build look a little messy. And how I have it right now, it's more on the messy side because basically, moral of the story is the pathway I have now, or before I started working on it was just a baseline of where I knew the pathway was going to be, and I always knew I would come back at the end and actually clean it up and make it look nicer. And so that is basically what I'm trying to do now. I also add like some parts of the pathway, I will add a section of grass and a tree, or just grass or just a tree, but mainly both grass and tree. And then I'll have it kind of divided by like a fork in the path. And I really love that detail. It really makes it feel a little bit more realistic than if you just had like a straight path. I don't know why I love it so much, but I do. Kind of like this right here is the perfect example. I have a little bit of a section cut out in the middle of the path with a tree and some grass, and I will move that like directional post right by the tree as well in that little area. And I just love adding that touch for some reason. It just really makes it feel more natural, if that makes sense. So our build is really starting to come together now, and I absolutely love the way it came out. I think it is so pretty, and it really gives the cheerful vibes I was aiming so hard for, and so that is so much fun to me for some reason. I don't know. But at this point, you're probably wondering, like, when are you going to furnish the inside of all of the cabins, like the actual cabins where everyone's rooms are? And don't worry, I'm almost done with the terrain paint, and then the very last part of the build is when I furnish the cabins. But I do want to mention that I felt like it was unnecessary for you to watch me build every single of the campers' cabins. So they're all pretty much the same, with the same furniture like I was saying earlier, but they do have different color schemes and a little bit of a different decoration and a little bit of a different format on the inside. So I figured if I showed you just one of the cabins instead of all of them, it made a lot more sense time frame wise, instead of you having to sit through every single one of them even though they're basically the same. So I chose my two favorite ones that I did, and I showed you that one. And of course, my favorite ones are the ones right by the water. I mean, why wouldn't they be my favorite? These are the best cabins on the property 100%. So I did do two of the cabins for like masculine Sims, and then the other two I did for feminine Sims. I really liked having, you know, obviously boys and girls are both going to be going to this camp, but I like the realistic aspect of having them separate at the same time and not rooming together. So this cabin I'm working on now is for the feminine Sims. Obviously, there's lots of colors going on, lots of pinks, purples, yellows, blues, lots of colors. And then the other one is more of the masculine side, which is more of the neutral type of cabin. I also really tried hard to stick with this being just the sleeping area, not having any sort of activity in here other than this bookshelf, obviously. So they have reading they can do, and then they have each other they can talk to. There's mirrors in here so that they can practice like their charisma skill if they want to. There's a few skill building items in here, but nothing out of the ordinary. Like nothing out of the ordinary as far as like a bedroom is concerned. I really liked the idea of having all of the building activities, the skill building activities, outside or in the main part of the cabin. And then having this area just for the Sims to come and sleep or shower or use the toilet or whatever they need to do, fill up their needs bars a little bit, and that's about it really at the end of the day. At this point, we're pretty much finishing up with the camper side. You can see off in the distance when I scroll out the other two that are there, so you see what you need to see. They're basically all the same, just a little bit different here and there, just so that it's not boring. You know, I didn't want it to be boring, I didn't want it to be too samey, but at the same time, I'm using only the base game, and adventure awaits, which I don't think I mentioned that in the beginning, but too late now, too late to go back now. So if you weren't aware, this is a limited pack build. This is using only the base game and adventure awaits. So using only those 2 packs, I really was limited on what I could do in the bedrooms anyways. So yeah, I mean, that is pretty much it as far as the campers' rooms go. And now we are finally starting to work on the director's room and the counselor's room. So both of these cabins, of course, they have their own personal bathrooms as well. And obviously the counselors, they have to share a bathroom, but there's only 2 in there, so that shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. And like I said earlier in the build, I really wanted to make the director's room a little bit different than the counselor's room. And obviously there is a double bed in here, but I wanted it to be even more different than that. Honestly, at the end of the day, that's not that different. It's a bed, right? And this director's room also has a fireplace, but to be honest, it's more for show. I don't think you can actually light it because there's not enough space in between the bed and the fireplace, but I liked it there. I figured whatever. And right now I have a love seat by the window, but that does end up changing. I end up putting the love seat idea over in the counselor's room, and here in the director's room I end up adding a computer desk with a computer, and I was explaining that earlier. I went into detail, so I won't put you guys through that again, don't worry. But yeah, like I was saying, the love seat I do end up moving over to the counselor's cabin, and I figured that they probably sit there and kind of chat at night. And I also included one of the objects that came with the pack is like this storage box briefcase almost looking thing, and there's like books and a lamp on it, and I kind of pictured the counselors sitting there at night, and then they discuss their plans for the next day, if that makes sense. So that's what I was thinking with that sort of setup. And both of the bathrooms in the director's cabin and the counselor's cabin, they're exactly the same. It's not different whatsoever, other than the fact that I included 1 robe in the director's and I included 2 in the counselor's. That's the only difference between those 2 bathrooms. So at this point in the build, guys, we have about 5 minutes left, and I explained everything there is to know about my version of Camp Gibbi Gibbi that is specifically for teenagers. But like I said, if you want to have kids included here or just do kids and not teens, you could totally do that, no problem. Honestly, all of the skill building items I included on this lot, for the most part, can be used by children too. So I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you enjoyed my version of Camp Gibbi Gibbi. I had a lot of fun building it, and yeah, I really hope you enjoyed it. Of course, if you did, please do not forget to leave a like on this video. That way I know to continue making more builds just like this one, and also subscribe if you have not already, and why don't you share it with your friends? I would appreciate it so much. It definitely helps the algorithm kick my video out to even more simmers, and I just can't even explain to you guys how much I appreciate each and every one of you that takes the time to watch my videos, share my videos, and comment in the comments down below to interact with me. I really appreciate you all so much, more than you really would ever know. So like I said, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to leave a like, and also this is available on the gallery if you do want to download it and play in it. I hope you all have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Enjoy the screenshots, and I will see you all in the next video very soon. Bye guys!